Hi there and welcome to another PSD Tuts Plus spoon-fed Photoshop tutorial. I'm Gavin Steele, and in today's tutorial I'm going to take you through Alvaro's create a watercolor themed website design with Photoshop. And it's a really detailed tutorial how you create these effects, and we're going to go through some of these processes now. So you can see the final effect here. We have this watercolor kind of top part where we've got this image, this painting that looks like it's being painted by this brush. A little about us box with this kind of faded background. Again, our navigation at the top, and if I just scroll down, the general layout of the site. And we're going to create these little tabs down the bottom, and of course our footer. And you can see it kind of carries that theme of watercolor throughout. And we're going to go ahead and start creating that in a second. We're going to be using the 960 grid system, so do check that out and download the files. The Photoshop link is right there. We're going to be using some free white paper texture. We're going to be using this image, and we're going to be using some brushes. Of course, you might already have your own watercolor brushes from other tutorials. And again, we're going to be using this image of this paintbrush. So that's the tutorial, and don't forget to check out the original tutorial over at psdtutsplus.com because there's lots of little text explaining the process, sketches, the idea, right from start to the completed file. So let's head over to Photoshop. Okay, here I have our file opened up. I've chosen the 12 column template, so make sure you just grab those files, and I've stuck them all in this little group here called template. So here's our 12 column grid. And you can turn them all on and off to see how it's set up. And because we're using the 960 grid, I've actually expanded the canvas a little bit. The width of my canvas is 1420 pixels and the height is still 1020 pixels. That allows us to see this little edge area over here for those people using larger screens. So it just gives you an idea of where this website's going to fit in our page. I've put all those files, like I said, into a folder called templates. Now you need to go and find a good paper background texture. I'm going to use the one I downloaded earlier. So let me just get to that now. Minimize these out of the way. Okay, so I've got this paper texture here I downloaded. I'm just going to drag that straight into Photoshop, like so. Now, we can't just stick it in because it's going to be our background. It's going to be repeating behind all of our imagery. And when you come to code it, if the image doesn't repeat well, you're going to get lots of harsh lines in your background. So we need to do a bit of work on this paper background texture. So we're going to select a square. I'm going to grab my little rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to choose a fairly nondescript area, maybe this area in the middle. And I'm just going to grab it, hold down Shift, and that's going to give me a square. I'm going to grab about, in fact, let me get a bigger area. Let's get this area over here. Hold down Shift. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to press Command C, Command N to get a new document, and then Command V. So once we're in the new document, we need to offset this, which means this is the tool that we're going to use, or the filter even, to allow us to turn this into an object that can be repeated across a background. So we're going to go up to Filter, Other, and we're going to come down to Offset. Now, we want to kind of offset it so that our edge is somewhere in the middle. So we're going to change our horizontal and vertical, and just keeping an eye on our background. So I'm going to increase those, like so. You can just see that line now getting closer to the middle. So it's just wrapping that image around to the other side, so they're going to line up perfectly on our edges. And again, I'm going to grab the vertical, but I'm going to bring this down a little bit. Like so, and you can just see that there. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, it looks pretty good. And then I'm going to click on OK. And then we're just going to use the clone tool, and we're just going to fix these hard lines. So head over to our clone tool. Got a nice soft brush there. Okay. And I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm going to try and start to merge these colors together. So just selecting around the edge. And eventually changing where I alt click, we'll get a fairly good little blend in going on. And because we're changing where we alt click, we hopefully shouldn't get any kind of repeating lines. But I think that looks pretty good. And another neat little trick, if you head up to File and Save for Web and Devices, in the little drop down menu over here, we can edit output settings. And then from these options, we can select background, click on OK. For some reason this isn't fitting into my screen here. But on yours, you should be able to see the little preview button. If you click on that, it will show you this in a website being repeated. But for some reason, this is not fitting on my screen. I think it's because of my screen resolution. And we can drag this onto our new document with V on the keyboard, to our Move tool, drag it over to our window, and there we go. Now I'm just going to change my background color. I'm going to change it to black. That way, if we get any gaps between our repeating background, we're going to see these black lines. And V on the keyboard, we're going to position this not our template layer, our layer. Let's move it above our template layer. Close that down. Right. So let's move this over to the left like so. Command T, we're just going to scale it down, holding Shift. Okay, and then hit enter. And basically we're just going to tile our background. So I can hit Command H to get rid of our guides. I'm going to hold down Alt. We can still see the columns there. Hold down Shift. And then just nudge it. And then we don't get a line, which is great. Alt again, go to the left this time. To the right, sorry. Just nudge it, and again, by having that black, you would know if you've left a line, like so. There we go. And I'm going to alt click and drag that one over here. Okay. And again, drag it down. And hopefully you can start to see our repeating background. Don't forget to hold Alt, and then Alt again. You can just zoom out. Okay, and all of these ones, they've got seems like they've got a slight line there, but when I zoom in, no, there's no line. So that's just a little oddity in Photoshop for the minute. Okay, V on the keyboard, hold Alt. Bring that down. Let's zoom in. And then just nudge it up. Making sure we don't have a line. And then we can alt copy that across. Like so. Okay, and that should be our canvas totally covered. Let's zoom out. Okay, apart from our top area up here. So again, just going to zoom in. And I'm going to use auto select. I'm going to select this layer, turn off auto select, hold down Alt, drag up. Now remember, it's perfect. You need to make sure that you perfectly align each of these, otherwise when the coder comes to chop this up or slice it up, they're not going to align and you're going to have some issues. Okay, let's go across again and again. And that looks like we've got all of that area. Yep, that looks pretty good. Okay, so we're going to merge all of those layers now. So we can click on the top one, come all the way down, and I'm going to stop just short of our first one, hit Command E. And the reason I'm doing that is just in case our coder wants to see what a slice is. I'm going to leave that there for them to use, but obviously they can do it themselves, which is fine. Grab those two, Command G, group them together, and I'm just going to call that for now background texture, and let's zoom in. Okay, let's turn those guides back on. Command H. Can now close my texture and my slice. Don't want to save that, and we can get started on our design. Let's go and get that image that we've downloaded, drag that into Photoshop. Okay, and we're going to grab our selection tool, and we're just going to grab a nice landscape kind of picture here. So I'm going to grab it from about here, come down. That looks pretty good. Yep, so that's going to be our focal point. Oops, excuse me. And then I'm going to hold down V, and it's going to bring up these scissors. I'm going to cut that area out, take it into my new document, and just drop it right in. Command T, just going to scale that down just a bit, hold down Shift. I'm going to hold down Alt just to center it around that area. And again, just move it up. Like so. You don't need to be too precise with your guides for now, because we're going to do some effects to this, and then just hit enter. Now we need to think about where we want our header to start and where we want it to end, and move on to our actual content for our website. This area might be a little bit too big for our header, so we might want to use this space here. So again, I'm going to Command T and just going to bring it in just a little bit, like so, and then just going to position it like so. So all I'm saying is that even though we've got all of this part of the image, we're not going to delete it for now, because we're going to apply an effect to it, and actually we might want to keep this area and get rid of the top area, or we might want to keep the top area and get rid of this area. So let's start playing around with those effects. I'm going to press Command H to get rid of my guides for now. I'm going to duplicate my landscape layer. Let's label it first. Okay, Command J on the keyboard is going to duplicate that layer for us. And then we're going to invert this layer. So Command I is going to change that and invert all those colors. And then we're going to saturate it. Image, adjustments, hue and saturation. And we're going to reduce saturation right down to a -100. Click on OK and set that layer to overlay. Right, then what we're going to do is merge those two layers together. Command E. And then we're going to use the art history brush. Now we need to take a snapshot first, so I'm going to go up to Windows and History. Going to press this little button here, this little camera. It's going to create a snapshot up at the top. Just going to grab that. And then I'm going to come over to our brush tool over here, hold down and select Art History Brush Tool, like so. And we need to set this up. So we need to make sure that the mode is set to normal. Opacity is going to be right down 25%. And style is going to be tight and short. Area is going to be 25 pixels, but this is something that we can play around with. And tolerance is going to be set to 0. So I'm going to grab a chalky brush, this 36, so an irregular brush, and we're going to start painting over our image, and you can start to see what effect this is going to have. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, just so we can see. Okay, and if I just start clicking, you can start to see that it instantly starts to turn this into a nice painting. Like so. Now you can play around with your brushes. So you can add some shape dynamics, some roundness, and so on. But I'm just going to keep it as is for now. And again, just coming around, brushing in these areas. Like so. And it's a nice quick little tip for getting this kind of painted effect. And obviously adjust the size of your brushes for these small areas. And then just play around with it till you get the effect that you want. It's kind of like that unfinished watercolor look. Just going to come down the side here. Come over to the side. Okay, and we're going to work the left hand side. Like so. Okay, it's starting to look pretty good. I'm going to increase the size of my brush for this kind of mountainy area, reduce the opacity. Increase the opacity, increase the area. Oops, too much. Again, these are the things that you can play around with. Okay, let's zoom out and have a look. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. You can see we've definitely got that kind of painted effect going on. And that's the basis for this effect. We're going to go in now and apply some brushes and really tie it in as if you can actually see the strokes or the water's kind of bled on the actual page below. So let's do that now. We're going to go back to our web page. And a lot of people always ask me, they're like, you just install these brushes, but you never really show us how to do it. So I'm going to go over to our brush pack here, click on download, and that's going to start to download, and then we're going to load that file up. So that should now be in my downloads. I'm just going to click on my folder, and there we have the file. Drop that onto my desktop, go back into Photoshop, and click on your brush tool, and we're going to click this little arrow to the right. We're going to load brushes, come to my desktop, click on the file, and click load. Okay, so what that's going to do is that's going to add all of those brushes to our list down at the bottom down here. Now there's quite a few, so I'm just going to drag this down, and we're going to be actually using all of these, 2 of these. It's up to you for the kind of effect that you want to get. So before we start using them, what we need to do is we need to apply a layer mask to our landscape copy. So in order to do that, we're going to go up to Layer, Reveal All, Layer Mask, Reveal All. So we've got a nice white block there. Going to press X on the keyboard. That's going to flick between our foreground and background color, and make sure you have a black selected. Then what we're going to do is, using any of those brushes in our brush tool, we're going to grab one, bring it up here, click, and see the effect that it has on our image. Let's grab another one. Let's grab this one, reduce the opacity down a bit, start to add that one in. And again, we're just going to go through this, adding lots of different brushes, like so. Keep it nice and random, they can overlap each other. They're going to add to that overall effect. Okay, let's go back in, let's grab a couple more, and just really work on this, just to get that effect of those watercolor marks coming through. Nice big one there, and over to the left. Let's grab another one. Coming in over the top. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now we need to start focusing on the edges. We want to get this so that it looks like it's blended in with the paper rather than a harsh edge. So we're going to still use the brush tool set to black. We're going to increase the opacity to 100%, and I'm just going to reduce the size of my brush and just click to the left over here. And we're going to get this slightly faded effect coming in. Again, choose a different brush. Oops. Make sure you click on your document. Let me undo that last one. Let's grab another brush. I'm just trying to get it to fade, so I just want these edges here. And I'm clicking rather than dragging, just so I can get the edge. That's what happens if you drag, you get this kind of line effect, and that's not what we want. Again, I'm going to reduce the opacity down now, change the brush. Opacity about 50. Okay, and then just start to click. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Looks pretty good. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer. Bring that below our texture here. And we're going to click on gradient, and we're going to choose, excuse me, our first color. We're going to set that to 96, AF and CE. Click on OK, and we're going to move to our last color, which actually is going to be white, but I'm just going to flick these. Just bring this right down here, like so. Click on OK. Make sure you got the first option selected up here in the top of our menu, our linear gradient. Hold down Shift, click from the top down to the bottom, and it's going to apply that gradient. But I want it to come down to about here. So I'm going to start a little bit further down. That looks a little bit better. And then we're going to set this layer to linear burn. And let's have a look at how that looks. Okay, it's probably still a little bit low there. So Command-Alt-Z is going to take me back. And I'm just going to apply that effect one more time, not quite so low. That looks pretty good. And then set that to linear burn. Yeah, I like the look of that. Okay, let's move on to the next step. Alright, I'm going to turn my guides back on, Command-H, I'm going to bring all of that back on. And we're going to start to work with our content area. And we're going to use a rounded rectangle tool. So let's head over and select that. And we're going to set the radius to 15 pixels. Okay, now we're going to draw from the second guide for the far left. So over here. And we're going to take that all the way to the right and to the second guide over on the right hand side. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Move this over to the right. Okay, so I'm going to start, let's start right here. I'm going to take that all the way over to the end, to the second. And the reason we're not going all the way to the end is because just in case you want to add any shadows or anything, it can drop into that area. And I'm just going to bring this down and release like so. Let's go up. Let's for now change the color to white and click on OK. So once we've got that in place, and I can zoom out just so we can see. Okay, once we've got that in place, we're going to reduce the fill down to about 35. Okay, we're going to set a stroke of 1 pixel. And we're going to set it to inside. We don't want to lose any of our grid space. So click on inside. And then we're going to set the color of that to white. Click on OK and OK. And we're going to label this content BG for background. And let's hit enter. We can click off that layer, hide our guides, zoom in, and you'll notice one thing: we can't see our rounded edge. You need to make sure you keep an eye on and label all of your layers and make sure that they're in the right order in our stack. There we go. Okay, so that's starting to look pretty good. We can see that's where all of our content's going to go. We're going to have a sidebar down the right hand side, and our main content area is going to be over here to the left. Now we could leave that as it is, but it's not the easiest to code because you've got a lot of fading elements, and we want to make sure that any content that's added to this area, if it goes outside of the box, or if you put more content in later on, it's not going to break the design. So we're going to do a little trick where we're going to make sure we've got a white area down here that can be repeated throughout to make this area a little bit bigger whenever it's needed. So we need to duplicate this layer, Command J on the keyboard, and we're going to set fill back up to 100%, and we're going to hide our stroke, all of our effects. And then we're going to go to Layer Mask, and we're going to select Hide All, like so we can still see underneath. And then we're going to fill it with a linear gradient from black to white. So let's select that, black to white. I'm going to hold down Shift. And drag that down like so. I'm going to bring it just a little bit more. There we go. That might be a little bit too harsh. Again, you just got to play around with this until you get something that you're happy with. So now we've got this area at the top. This is the only area that needs to be transparent. Everything else inside this box is going to be white, so we can just select a thin strip or set the background layer to be white, and it can get as big or as small as we want because we don't need to affect this top area. Right, once we've done that, we're going to work on our page navigation, which is going to be at the top of our page. So we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to grab the rounded rectangle tool again. Make sure you've got the radius set to 15 again, that's fine. And we're going to set the color for this to be a nice blue. So that's 3F 5060. And click on OK. And it's going to be the top of our design. So let's turn on our guides again. And we're going to grab it in here. And all the way to our far end, like so. And again, make sure that is on the top layer. And I'm just going to call this for now our nav background. And I'm going to hit enter. Set that fill to about 50%, like so. And we're going to give that a 1 pixel stroke. So I'm going to turn that on, but we're going to go into it. And 1 pixel is fine, but the color we're going to use is the same as we did for the actual color of the round the rectangle shape itself. So 3F 5060, and click on OK. 1 pixel is fine inside. Click on OK. And then let's click away. Command H, get rid of those guides. Z to zoom in. And we can see it looks like a nice little transparent drop down window there, which is brilliant. Type tool now, we're going to add in some fake links. We're going to make them white for now. Just add those in here. So we're probably going to need a home button, about us. Let's do home, then 10 spaces. About us. Then I'll write some. Again, you would replace these with your own particular links. Page 5. Contact. What else might you have? Sitemap, etc., etc. Let's make sure that's all the same, all capitals, and then I'm going to make sure we grab all of that and move that above that layer. And again, let's grab it and just increase the size just a touch. Font wise, I think we can do either future. Let's go up here. What are we going to go for? Let's go for Futura or Tahoma. Okay, that looks pretty good. Yep, that looks fine. Okay, so again, that's all going to be replaced with code. You're just putting that there really as a guide for the developer, so that they can then replace that with your actual links, which might be brought in dynamically with WordPress or something like that. Next thing we need to do is between these two layers, I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to grab my brush tool with white selected. I'm going to grab a nice little paint splatter here. Looks pretty good. Turn caps lock off so we can see it. Reduce it right down in size. And then I'm going to click like so. We're only on 56%. Let's bring that back up to 100. I'm going to click on there a couple times. Make sure it's nice and strong. Go back into our text layer. Change about us. And we're just going to change the color of that particular one to 223A and 54. Click on OK. And what that does is it tells the developer this is going to be our hover state. And we want it so that when we move the mouse over the design, it's basically a watermark comes under each of these, and it's going to change the font from white to blue. Now the next thing to do is to basically tweak some of these effects down here. Now you might be happy with the overall look of our content area, but some people might argue that it doesn't quite blend that well into an overall watercolor kind of feel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rasterize or turn our background layer, or content background, sorry, into a smart object. And then what I'm going to do is head up to Layer, Layer Mask, Reveal All. And then I'm going to grab a brush. We're not going to use a watercolor brush. I'm just going to use a rather large soft brush. Okay. And we're just going to start to break this crisp line along the top. We're going to start to break that up. So again, make sure you've got a black soft brush, and we're going to paint some spots. Reduce my opacity down to about 50%, like so. Reduce my flow down to about 50%. And just going to click on this area along here. Like so, just so it just fades into our background, and again makes it look like it's merging in with the area and kind of melts away into our background. Okay, so just going to keep the crisp corners, just again to give the idea that this comes across like so, but I think that looks pretty good. Okay, now we're going to work on our page title, which is going to go in this area over here on the left. And to do that, we're going to use the text tool. So let's head over and grab that. It doesn't really matter. We're going to start to sort these folders out in a second. So it doesn't really matter for now where you're going to put this. But I would just for now stick it below our navigation layer. And just going to click up here at the top. Okay, so we're going to call this Watercolor Web Design. Okay. Oh, oops, let's go back. Okay. And highlight all of this. I'm going to right align it. I'm going to increase the size a little bit. Let's turn on. Oops. Come back and turn on our guides, and then V on the keyboard. We're just going to move this into place, and we want it to kind of maybe just touch this line here from the original tutorial. So I'm just going to increase my size like so. And then I'm going to grab this area here, reduce this in size. In fact, I think this one can be a little bit bigger. Okay. And again, we're just looking at these guides. They're just giving us an idea of, how we want everything to line up on our page, but I think that's pretty good. Okay, so we've got watercolor design in there, and we're going to change the color as well. So let's just go back in. We don't want it to be quite white, so if I grab that, we're going to change that color to F2, F6, FC. Click on OK, and then our color we're going to set E1, ED, FF, and click on OK. And that looks pretty good for now. Command H. Yep. And let's not forget this area down the bottom. We don't want that to be white either. So we can set that to F2, F6, FC. And click on OK. So we've almost finished this. This is going to be our logo area. We're going to create a new layer, bring it below our text, like so. Just call it logo for now. Going to grab the brush tool, change to this blue. Let's change that to 112C37. Grab a paint splatter or watermark, something like a nice roundish one, or yeah, I'm going to grab number 23. Turn off caps lock so we can see it. Just reduce it a little bit, and I'm going to paste that behind like so. Okay. In fact, I'm going to do that a couple of times just to make sure it's really good. Then I'm going to reduce its fill and reduce its opacity. But it's enough that it kind of just outlines our watercolor writing there. Let's grab those two layers, sorry. Command G. Let's call that logo, and let's start to just organize this a little bit. This is going to be our nav, or our navigation, so Command G is going to group that. Okay, and this is all our header stuff. And I've actually just grabbed content BG, that's fine. Yep, that's all okay. Just gonna grab these. And obviously you can do this however you want. Just gonna move that. Header, what's that? Header. Okay. And let's close that down. Just a little bit more organized in case you're going to hand this file on to somebody else. They can quickly identify what area is what. They can isolate it and bring it back and so on. Okay, so next thing that we need to do is start to work on some of these other areas. This pen, the paintbrush, and our little about area up in the top. So we need to go and open up our browser. Let's head over to our brush, and we need to download our brush. I think I've got that downloaded already. Let me just see. Nope, I didn't get that, so I can just bring that up. I'm going to click on that image. It's going to load that image up for me. Let's load Photoshop back up because we're going to be dragging it into Photoshop. So it's a nice large image. We don't need any of the hand area. We're just worried about our paintbrush here. I'm just going to drag that off. Close that. And then drag this into Photoshop. And I'm just really quickly going to extract the paintbrush here. Create a new layer like so. Then I'm going to zoom in, grab my pen tool, just starting up here. I'm going to start to trace around like so. Don't worry too much about the brush. We're going to use a little layer mask to make sure we get some nice brush edges. And again, just work your way up. like so. Right click, make a selection, Command J, going to stick that selection onto a new layer, and there we have our brush. So I'm going to Command Select, Command Copy, and we're going to paste that onto our document. V on the keyboard, and let's start to try and position that. Command T, just going to rotate it, and we're going to stick that somewhere like so. Yep, that looks pretty good, and let's drag that right above our navigation area, and we're going to make the shadow kind of fall underneath this. So we're going to quickly grab a mask in there, grab my brush tool, doesn't really matter what brush I've got selected, and I'm just going to chop in to these edges a little bit. Like so. Okay, so there's our brush painting down on our document. Now before we start to add our shadow to our paintbrush to make it look realistic, like it is actually coming down onto this bit of paper or watercolor paper, we're going to add a few more little watermarks, just a bit more color to our background layer, and we're also going to add a big splodge of color here as if it's just been painted that one particular mark. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a new layer called More Colors, or More Watercolors. Okay, grab our brush. I'm just going to, we can leave that set as it is, and I'm going to come into these kind of color settings down here and just fade it up till we get a nice palette that kind of looks like it would be part of a watercolorist's palette. I'm going to grab a blue, click on OK, increase the brush size, set this to overlay. We're just going to add these little splodges of color like so. Again, grab a pink maybe. Let's reduce the brush size. Let's go for yellowy green. Okay, just adding these little splodges of color to just add a bit more realism to the overall effect. Okay, it looks pretty good. Now before we start to add our shadow to our paintbrush to make it look realistic, like it is actually coming down onto this bit of paper or watercolor paper, we're going to add a few more little watermarks, just a bit more color to our background layer, and we're also going to add a big splodge of color here as if it's just been painted that one particular mark. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a new layer called More Colors, or More Watercolors. Okay, grab our brush. I'm just going to, we can leave that set as it is, and I'm going to come into these kind of color settings down here and just fade it up till we get a nice palette that kind of looks like it would be part of a watercolorist's palette. I'm going to grab a blue, click on OK, increase the brush size, set this to overlay. We're just going to add these little splodges of color like so. Again, grab a pink maybe. Let's reduce the brush size. go for yellowy green. Okay, just adding these little splodges of colour to just add a bit more realism to the overall effect. Okay, it looks pretty good. Then we're going to select our colour. We're going to choose, excuse me, 1-1, 2C, 3-7. Let's click on OK. We're going to choose a nice big brush. This 488 looks pretty good. Come down here and it's a little bit big. Let's see how that looks. Okay, it looks a bit small. Oops, and I'm not particularly happy with the shape of the brush. Let's go with this one here, looks a bit better. Let's create a new layer for this. And I'm going to hit that down like so. Set this to soft light. And again, I'm just going to build that up like so. And it kind of just looks like it's just been painted down by this brush. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add, let me just stop 1 second. And now we're going to create a new layer. We're going to call this sky blue. And we're going to select the color 5-1, D3, D3. Click on OK. And let's grab a nice little brush. 741 looks pretty good. Let's see how big that is. Okay, it's a little bit too big and it's a bit too horizontal. 456 looks pretty good. Yep, that's great. So we're going to set this layer to overlay as well, and we're just going to add this little splodge. Just going to reduce the size down as if this has come straight from the brush. Like so. That looks pretty good. So that looks like it's just been painted, that last little spot, to tie in with the rest, and you know that the artist is halfway through the project or something like that. Okay, now what we're going to do is, with our paintbrush, we're going to create our drop shadow. So let's come down to our brush. I'm going to bring it above like so. And again, I'm going to go back into my mask, grab the brush, I'm going to flick back to white, and I'm just going to reveal just the edges of my brush by pressing white. It's going to paint back over that black spot. And what that's going to do is just create this little effect like, you know, the paint's still on the brush and it's just coming in like so. Right, let's grab this layer. I'm going to call it brush. Command J. I'm going to duplicate that layer, bring it below, and we're going to call that brush shadow. And hit enter. Okay, so now with that layer selected, what we need to do is we're going to go into hue and saturation. We're going to grab our lightness, bring it all the way down to -100, click on OK. Then we're going to go up to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, set it to about 4 pixels. Click on OK. Reduce the opacity down to about 50%. Like so. Command T, and we're just going to rotate it just a touch and bring it down like so. Now the bigger the gap between here and here is going to give the impression that the brush is further away or closer to the actual document. So again, you just want to play around with this. I'm just going to drag this up like so and hit enter, and now we can see there's a little bit of an angle there, and I'm just going to reduce the opacity down just a smidgen. That looks pretty good. Okay, so about 35%. Okay, now what we're going to do is go back into our brush layer, and we're going to use our dodge and burn, and we're going to affect the brush. The reason we do this last is because once the brush is in its environment, we can kind of guess where the shadows might be. So mid-tones, reduce that down to about 50%. Reduce the size of my brush, make sure you've got a soft brush selected, and this area here, just going to slightly darken and move up. Because that's the area that's going to be in shadow. Coming down. Like so. And that kind of just helps it blend more into the picture. And you can imagine that if it's dark under the brush, then the shadow is going to be underneath that. Right. Let's create our first information box. It's going to go up here to the right. It's going to be our about box. So I'm just going to grab some text for now. And I'm going to set it. For now, I'm just going to set it to white. So let's grab that back up here, or an off blue kind of white. Click on OK, and reduce the size. And for the title, I'm going to use that Futura font. Where are you? There we go. And we're just going to type about. Okay. I'm not sure why we can't see that. So I'm going to delete that layer for now and just see if we can try that again. Click over here. Oh, font size. That would explain a lot. So, it's always those little things. There we go. And let's bring that over to the right hand side. And we don't want it to be too big. So I'm going to bring that down maybe like 28. Let's move that over to the left hand side. Okay, we're then going to create a grey bar with the line tool, so we can set that to a really light grey. And I'm going to click and drag and release. Command H to bring up our guides, and we can just start to align some of these things. So I'm just going to shift my A over to the left, and again grab my line, and just shift that over. I'm going to turn off a couple of these layers below. And we can change this back to white. Okay, just to make sure that I'm lining that up to that line, that looks pretty good. Okay, we can turn everything else back on. Command H, I'm going to set that to white. It's not quite working for me. Okay, so we've got our about, and we're going to add some random text now. And I'm going to click down here, we're going to change that to our Tahoma font again. Okay, and for now I'm just going to type in some jargon. Let's have that white, right aligned. And reduce that right down to about 16 or so. Okay. I'm just going to grab that. Now, because of the resolution I'm recording on, I hope that's coming out clear to you. It's a little bit blurred for me, but Hopefully that will be nice and clear. Okay, I'm going to grab all of these layers, group them, and let's call this about. And just going to move that up a little bit. We're going to go back into that folder. We're going to create one more layer, new layer. We're going to use the rounded box tool again. So the rounded rectangle tool, and this time we need to set our color to a light green color, which is 434726. Click on OK. The radius, again, make sure it's set to 15 pixels, and we're going to set the fill to about 50% once we draw this out. So I'm going to turn on my guides and have this come from about here. Like so. Don't worry about any of the effects for now. Let's grab these other layers within here, and we're just going to start to shift those to the right, like so. And I'm going to grab this layer and shift that to the left. Okay, and up. Then we're going to go back to that layer we created, and let's apply the stroke. The stroke color needs to be the same color as we've just used, which was 434726. Click on OK. 1 pixel inside, that's all okay. And yep, the fill is set to 50%. And we're going to right click on that layer, convert it to a smart object, layer mask, and we're going to select reveal all, grab our brush, grab a normal soft brush, nice and big, change it to black, reduce the opacity down to about 50%, like so, and we're just going to start to click. And really just blend this box. Like so. Okay, and again you can play around with that and get the effect that you're looking for. Let's drag this now right below our other layers, just so they stand out on top, and that looks a lot better. And we can close that group down. Alright, the next couple of steps, they're pretty easy if we go down to the tutorial. We're just going to be adding in our content area. Let's come down, which is this area here, a little featured area. Okay, now it's just made up of, an example image, a couple more square images down below, and use a polygon tool to create a little triangle, fill it with blue, then a rectangle layer over the top set to white, faded down with text. And I'm just going to position that onto the document. It'll add too much time for the tutorial to go through grabbing that image and placing in all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to take you through where we're going to place that on the document. And the first of those is going to be our sidebar area now, which is the area we've got left over here. Command H. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks left, and that's where we're going to build our sidebar. So we're going to grab our rounded rectangular tool again, and we're going to set that to 5 pixel radius. Let's hit enter, and make sure it's set to white. And click on OK, and we're going to do it over these 4 remaining columns like so, and we're going to come right down here, and I'm going to come right down to the bottom for now. Okay, let's make sure that has a nice stroke just like we've done before. Set to white, 1 pixel inside, click on OK. And we're going to set that to a fill of only 25%, like so. And let's hit enter, Command H, and let's have a look at how that looks. That looks pretty good. Okay, we've got some nice white space going on, which is good. And what we can start to do is work on our featured area, where we're going to have blog posts and the area that's going to, and the stuff that's going to go inside of our sidebar. Okay, and if we just zoom out, we can get an idea of how our page is starting to look. We're going to start to assemble some of these pieces. Now, I've got my folders already over here because it really is just assembling items that you've downloaded through the tutorial. So we're going to start with the sidebar. If I just turn that on the right hand side and zoom in, you can see that all we've got is a little icon that we downloaded. Again, just copied that and pasted it straight into the document. We added the text in exactly the same way as we did for our about. We created our search box in exactly the same way as created all our other boxes. And again, we've got another icon here. The only thing that we've done to maybe highlight that is, again, grab our brush tool and just paint a couple of strokes behind those items, fade them down to a fill of about 50% opacity, lower that down as well, and just have them sitting behind those items. These are just square boxes, advertisement boxes, copy and pasted straight in. The Twitter icon, again, you can also download that and apply the text in the same way and paint a couple of brush strokes behind that area. Over on the left hand side over here, we've got our home content, and again, it's just a simple text across the top, and laying out the information. Again, we're using that little technique of adding a little paint watermark behind our text to give the effect that we're looking for, to tie everything in together. And then finally, excuse me, down at the bottom, we've got our footer, and again, that's a rounded rectangular toolbar tool. And we've used the paintbrush down at the bottom, a little bit stronger this time to bring out some color and tie the bottom into the overall page. And again, we've lined that up and added some text. So if we just zoom out and have a look, this is how your page should start to look. Now, if we come to our home content, I'm just going to press Command H, and I'm just going to nudge that up so that we get that aligned with our guides. And that's the only thing that you need to really worry about when you're adding information, is that you use the guides provided so that when the coder comes, they can start to slice it up, and it kind of has this semi-strict kind of layout to it that makes it a little bit easier to code. The next thing that we're going to add down at the bottom down here is our tabbed area. Okay, so to create our tabbed area, we're going to use our rounded rectangular tool, and we're going to draw out with a 5 pixel radius our first tab, or a box that our tabs are going to go in, like so. And I'm just going to increase the fill of that to about 55%. Okay, and hit enter so we can see our little tabbed area there. And then we're going to create our first tab, just bring that along like so. And that's going to have a stroke, and then we're going to create our next tab, and so on for the number of tabs that you want to have. I'm going to bring that fill right up to 100% just for now for those three, so they stand out a little bit better. And let's say you wanted to give these a grey outline, and let me just copy that layer style and paste that layer style over these. And we want our overall box to have that little grey outline as well. Okay, now the issue you've got is these center parts of our actual tabs themselves. Now what you can do there is we can just create a selection like so, and then on top of all of these, create a new layer, G on the keyboard, oops, make sure you got the bucket tool selected, and just fill that with white, Command deselect, and you get that that effect going across. Now I've just snipped off a little bit of the edge, so again you could free transform it or just make sure that initial selection is a little bit better. So now they're kind of odd looking tabs, but that might be the effect that you're going for. And then obviously the coder can come in and they can cut that up. Now I'm just going to turn these off for now because I already have my tabs created. If I just turn those on, and you can see exactly the same, just gave it that outline, created the tabs, and then used a white area to cover up the actual bottom line of our rounded rectangle. And then what you can do is you can set them to have a highlighted color. So this is white because it's selected, and these are pale blue and pale red. And when you click on them, they would then load up the content for that area. And that's the tutorial. I mean, the hardest part is creating this header area and working with the guides. Once you start creating your rounded rectangle tool boxes, fading them in and fading them out, it really is a cool little effect for your site. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. I've been Gavin Steele, taking you through Alvaro's Create a Watercolor Themed website design with Photoshop.